I just want to talk about the second half of Unregistered Kush, an album by Unregistered User as well as myself. But before I get into that album, I do want to play an unreleased track that I was thinking about putting onto the album. This track is called I Heard You Call My Name. It's inspired by a Velvet Underground song, which is called I Heard Her Call My Name. And yeah, I'm just going to play this track and see what you guys think about it. So after that, I'll talk about more tracks from the album.
I heard you call my name through the darkness. Playing dumb, they choosing who to get smart with. Been on some calm shit, confidence from being honest. I'm nauseous, finally got motion just to be car sick. Say a prayer for the convicts, convince yourself you're an artist. Your family can be rich like the partridge. Lawless, they only would watch you when you was a target. Raw shit, it's all spam, take me off your call list. In my crystal ball, I never saw this. They don't know the days when I was trying my hardest. William Pobell, how I was crawling. Alicia Keys, I can see how you keep on falling. I heard you call my name, heard you call my name. I heard you call my name, heard you call my name. I heard you call my name, heard you call my name. I heard you call my name, heard you call. Nervous laughter swerving past you. Federal student loans moving fast you. Overlap you, doing 70 in a tractor. Take the books off the shelf, but the self-help didn't help. Grandmother saying she wished she knew me. I didn't know myself. She passed away in 2020. Treat the corona like it's Henny. Took a risk but wasn't ready. For the few, there was plenty. Playing static selector, like me and the Grim Reaper playing checkers, whatever. Understanding forgotten when just trying to be clever. It wasn't cheddar, seeing W's like the front of a Jetta. The pressure creating longevity because diamonds are forever. Talking spicy like a pepper, then someone check you like the weather. They're planning memories that never occurred. I heard you call my name, heard you call my name. I heard you call my name, heard you call my name. I heard you call my name, heard you call my name. I heard you call my name, heard you call my name. Rotating planets. You wanna be down till you see they were drowning. I'm hearing hurry up and buy when I'm browsing. Keep it 1,000, let me know how it sounds.
So yeah, I would just want to talk about the next song, which is called Terminator 2. This track features a lot of futuristic lyrics and a very atmospheric instrumental that almost sounds like jazz fusion or maybe like progressive rock from the 1970s. I'm not entirely sure what Unregistered User sampled in order to kind of make this beat, but there are a lot of futuristic lyrics on this song, and it does kind of tie into the mood and vibe that's presented on the first two songs, and a little bit of suspended animation as well. Um, an example of some of these lyrics is Attack of the Flesh Eating Cyborg. These lines are kind of like why it's called Terminator 2. I have another line on here where I say digital expression merchant and staring at the screen like something was calling me. And I also have a line where I say from the first generation that was raised on the computer. And this line, I actually had this line for like years, but I never like used it in a song. So the next song is called Code Words, and it features a very jazzy type of instrumentation that feels almost hollow. It's this loop of a saxophone that's surrounded by other atmospheric sounds. I talk about topics of wealth inequality, as well as greed within America, as well as race also on this track. I wouldn't say it's like a deep track, and I wouldn't say it's abstract. A lot of this stuff is like very just in your face. I'm just kind of saying what it is that I'm saying. There's not like a lot of metaphors and punchlines on this. Um, the one thing I really do like about this track is kind of, I think the loop is not like a typical loop. I don't think it's in like a typical 4/4 time signature. And I did want to just like note that because I have an easier time finding the pocket on beats that are just different and not really in the typical 4/4 time signature. Uh, yeah, I actually figured that out when I was working with a producer named Third Revolution, who was very he was very like keen on not keen, I don't know if that's the right word. But he would do that a lot. He would make beats that are just in a different time signature than a lot of typical music within like Western civilization. And you know, I know that probably sounds crazy, me just dropping the Western civilization, but the whole thing that I'm trying to express is that a lot of music in America, Europe, and probably South America is within the 4/4 time signature, but other places do not use that same time signature. Places like Ethiopia is a good example. And this is my own personal like research. Like I've listened to a lot of just different music from other places, and I actually understand it at this point. Um, but even before I had like kind of had that knowledge, I always just had an easier time rhyming over beats that were not in this typical 4/4 time signature. And I don't know why that is. You know, I actually just rhymed over something like literally this weekend, and I'm just like, this beat is so fire, but it's just not giving me the space that I need to like really just, you know, get my verse off. But going back to this track, I was originally going to call this Roger Smith from the Big O. And the Big O is an anime that used to be on Toonami. It's basically about this detective. He has this robot as well as this butler. Shout out to Dorothy. She's like one of the doper characters on the show. And it's about, they basically solve cases within this town where no one remembers the history of anything. And I never really watched the entire anime, so I don't know if they ever find out like the history of the town. It's an interesting show. It's like subtly very experimental in a way. Just like this beat, you know, and just like this song. I would say a lot of songs on this entire mixtape are kind of like that. I would say the one track, Uncle Tom's First Apartment, that's the one track that's probably more so just obliviously experimental. But a lot of these tracks kind of are experimental in their own way. Terminator 2 is very sparse, is in kind of like the drum patterns that's on there. Um, that's what I feel like makes that track experimental. Um, the first track is kind of this kind of almost cloud rap instrumental, but it's not really like the Clams Casino type of cloud rap. It's more like hollow. Lost Poet Part 4, that's a more like almost vaporwave sounding instrumentation or just instrumental. Um, and that's the one thing I really do like just about this album. A lot of these beats I feel like is it's stuff that I haven't really rapped over, but it's done in a very subtle way to where you may not notice if you're not like paying attention. But I'm gonna talk about this. I'm not gonna talk about the next track, but I'm gonna talk about a track that I didn't include on the album. So I'll be right back. Yo, so I just want to talk about the next track, which is an interlude that I do not have a name for. I tried to mimic, or not mimic, but kind of go with the concept of the first track, which is kind of take all these audio recordings about the side effects of drugs and kind of put them together. I also mixed that in with an interview with a rapper named LZ from Far Rockaway. I consider him to be like one of the first abstract rappers within the genre of hip hop. Um, so yeah, LZ I feel like is a forefather to the style that I kind of currently do. Basically, the interview with LZ, he kind of confuses the this radio host that's giving him an interview, but kind of talking about these wars over language and how kind of a country that conquers another country changes the language of that country, and how you can kind of track the history of language through just tracking these wars. And I didn't really, you know, I wasn't aware of what LZ was talking about when I first found out about this interview, probably over 10 years ago. I feel like I just messed up what I was trying to say, but I wasn't aware of what he was trying to talk about. And I took a class in college about the history of the English language, and I actually learned that LZ is very, very right with what he's talking about. You can really learn a lot about a culture just by like seeing how the language changed over time through who was ruling that country. Um, and that does kind of slightly shape, not slightly, but that's a gigantic foundation for how people perceive life within that country. That's another thing I kind of learned about language in college is like language is almost like I don't know, it's like how you perceive the world is determined a lot by your own personal perspective of the language you use to describe that world and to create that world. Basically your language creates the world that you live in. That's how you get into stuff like affirmations and positive affirmations and stuff like that, and people trying to just create a consistent perspective within themselves and stuff. But language is a very interesting thing because the repetition of it becomes subconscious on some sort of level. But anyway, I'm gonna play this interlude and I'll be right back.
The mind-bending drugs seem to offer so much, but what do they really deliver?
I drink 40s.
Oh, 40s. All right. That's good. I mean, if that's your style.
It's my style. I'm slurring it just like every
Kids that have had prolonged psychosis, some have had to go to state hospitals. Some have been treated for 2 or 3 months and have been able to leave.
Okay. All right.
Listen, I'm out.
No, don't leave yet, man. You can't leave. We still got time. No.
I can't be talking like this.
How do they work? And what are the long-range effects of this drug on human personality?
Well, we don't know a great deal about them.
I don't think the emotional outbursts that they have is a war game.
On this, we see in electrodes that are on the scalp and also depth electrodes planted inside the brain. We see changes
From the curvature of their body movement into the plagiarism of actually shooting people again.
Oh, it's gonna go back in another circle.
Yeah, because the fame of the name has played itself out.
Okay, so the next song is called Penny Hardaway, and it features a very electronic instrumental provided by Unregistered User. One thing that I really like about this album is that a lot of these beats aren't the type of typical sounds that I normally rap over. It's not very kind of like lo-fi sounding hip hop. I mean, it does, overlap with that, obviously, but these beats do kind of sound very different to me. Like, the first beat is kind of more like cloudy, the beat by Just Was, and I'm just talking about in terms of the track list. And this beat kind of has that similar cloudiness to it, but it also feels just very electronic with the vocal sample as well as like the drum pattern. The thing that I love about this beat is that it almost doesn't sound like a hip hop beat. It sounds like something that would just be more so like a standalone electronic track. But I do like the fact that I think I kind of found an interesting pocket over it. And, I kind of rhyme about someone getting out of a state of depression and kind of moving on into the next period of life. It's like a song where I would say it represents like a transitional period for someone where they're transitioning from one point of, thinking about the world in a way and, transitioning to another point of like having a different perspective on things. So I do think this song is interesting due to the fact that it's one of the few songs that I recorded where I'm like, oh, this is a very like positive song. It's like low key uplifting, and I feel like that kind of holds together throughout the entire track. I have one line on here where I say, isolation was paradise till it turns into Taxi Driver. And I feel like that kind of sums up everything of what this track's about. Also, I'm on another track called Penny Hardaway. I used to be in a rap group called Urban Architects, and that song is also very dope. I would encourage anyone listening to this to also listen to Urban Architects, as well as, the two, Josh Alias and Young K, because those are two dope rappers. So I'm going to go on to the next thing, and I'll be right back. Yo, so the next track is called Uncle Tom's First Apartment. This is the most experimental track on the tape. I rhyme over what sounds like synthesizers being in reverse. I'm not entirely sure what exactly, was sampled for this beat or what kind of instruments are being used within this beat, but it is very like kind of more so experimental in how it's presented. The drums on this track are also very interesting and kind of, they almost remind me of more so like a heartbeat as opposed to like typical drum patterns. I don't know. A band that I'm very like, I'm a big fan of is Velvet Underground. And I remember I was reading something about Velvet Underground's music, and the person writing about it described, the drum patterns in their music sometimes as being just like a heartbeat, not even something that's like, necessarily the most rhythmic and going along with the beat. It's just like a consistent, metronome or like a heartbeat basically, which I think I've said like way more times than I wanted to say while explaining this. But basically, Uncle Tom's First Apartment is a story about an entertainer that's buying their first apartment, and they're having this guilt over their own personal artistic decisions. And the underlying theme of this song is that the entertainer is creating stuff that revolves around black stereotypes as well as like blackface. And they have guilt over, creating these type of things. There's a lot of like symbols that are being used for that feeling, like the line about domestic violence being next door and that sounding like riots. Um, and the line that really sums up the entire song is when I say the movie Birds, but with the Disney Channel crows. And basically, Disney, not Disney Channel, but there was a Disney movie that had these crows, which were kind of like, very stereotypical of, they fit like typical black stereotypes, basically. And I'm saying, that those crows are, almost closing in on someone, like how the movie Birds, which is an Alfred Hitchcock movie, where I think birds attack people. And I think the birds in that movie are actually crows. So that kind of speaks more so to this line and how it's kind of, the image that it's kind of trying to portray within this song. But I'm going to talk about the next track, and I'll be right back. Yo, so I just want to talk about the last track, which is called Industrial Decay. This track starts off with a sample by William Popel. That's the conceptual artist that I was talking about earlier, within the last video. And that's just what I talk about in terms of like there are these reoccurring themes within the mixtape, or I guess album. And the thing about this track, I knew the second that I recorded it, I wanted it to be an outro, even though this is one of the first tracks that I did record for the overall mixtape. And the reason for that is just I feel like it has a very celebratory kind of feel to it, almost like almost like a victory lap kind of feel. Not a victory lap in terms of like Nipsey Hussle's type of music, but just like a celebratory, kind of feel to it, as I like kind of said before. But this track is really interesting to me because it is like a boom bap, very traditional. It's probably the least experimental track on the entire tape. But I do feel like there are these subtle elements to it that kind of reach towards not only experimentation, but just kind of different things that people don't necessarily say within hip hop music. It's a very kind of like straightforward song, but at the same time, it also just kind of speaks a lot about, just kind of like this environment that I was trying to paint within the whole overall album. I mean, I did record this when I did still have like the same concept of like this scientist that creates this drug that kind of like has bad effects on the world. And this track was kind of going to be used as like, this is really like the example of what happened after all this entire aftermath of this thing destroying society. But, I decided not to do that. And, that's why this album also kind of reminds me of like Mulholland Drive by David Lynch. Because it's like there's this like, there's remnants of this idea, but it's kind of just morphed into kind of something different. And really what Unregistered Kush overall is just kind of about, is kind of about someone coming to terms with the environment they live in and still trying to seek joy and truth within that in order, not because they want to, but more so as a survival tactic. But yeah, man, that's the end of Unregistered Kush. I'm going to play some more unreleased tracks. Actually, just one more unreleased track called Patrick Star. I also just wanted to explain the album cover. It's a picture of an old church when I visited Montreal, and I just felt like it fit the overall mood of this mixtape, or I guess album. I did have a couple other covers that I was thinking about using, and I do have all of those on Bandcamp. Um, Let me know if you guys want to, if you want me to release these songs officially, the unreleased tracks, and I might just do something like that if, enough people like these songs. But thank you to whoever's listening to this, and have a great day and happy holidays.